Good evening. I'm John Batchelor. This is the John Batchelor Show. Jason Bourne in Hong Kong, but not the way Hollywood does it. Wonderful sequences of dare and ingenuity and escape, and always a wonderful heroine. No, Jason Bourne left the heroine in Hawaii. Jason Bourne is sitting in Hawaii talking to the South China Morning Post, talking a lot about what Jason Bourne did when he worked for a contractor working for the NSA. That conversation, because it's not a Hollywood script, doesn't have a second or third act right now. We're in the first act, and we're still discovering, or looking to discover, what Jason Bourne did that's got the FBI and the NSA and the CIA and the Obama administration exercised to the point of holding back right now in making assertions, holding back and saying, what are they doing to get Jason Bourne back? This isn't Hollywood. This is history, American history, and we're writing a new chapter. What does a 29-year-old have that makes him so dynamically frightening to the most powerful apparatus, national security apparatus, ever put together on this planet? Eli Lake is asking these questions, asking them the hard way. He writes national security for the Daily Beast, and the FBI is investigating Jason Bourne, also known as Edward Snowden. They're investigating what he stole and how he did it when he was at Booz Allen Hamilton or before, because they go back every day of his time with access to secrets. Eli, a very good evening to you. The FBI is investigating what and how, and it includes, say, the first document we saw, the Verizon document from the FISA court, and that it also includes what we're told is information about collection nodes in China and Russia. A very good evening to you. Is the FBI proceeding in an alarming way, or are they being, what you'd have to say, archival, librarians about this, going step by step? Good evening to you.
At this point, the FBI is pursuing a number of leads. One of those leads is whether there was a breach in the actual FISA court system or the computer systems, which are segregated from almost all other databases within the U.S. intelligence community, of these actual FISA orders and court warrants that are so incredibly secret and highly classified.
Because these computers are different, are they in a silo? Are they locked up? Do they have their own armed guards? And that's why the FISA surveillance court documents are special to the FBI?
I do not have the detail about whether there are armed guards and so forth.
I understand. I was being Hollywood. Thank you.
I understand. But what I would tell you is that these are stored on encrypted computers that are, sometimes the term is called air gap, but they're far more air gap. They're in special rooms that are, you're looking at the actual material to make sure there are no bugs or anything like that. And it is probably some of the most closely guarded documents in the entire U.S. government. It's so closely guarded that the phone companies that are asked to turn this over are not allowed to keep a digital copy of the warrant. Most of this is done on paper. When the Intelligence Committee and other committees that oversee this process are given these warrants, they're brought in classified pouches, and they have to be seen in the presence of a Justice Department attorney. That is the level of how closely they're guarded. Now, according to Keith Alexander, who is the NSA director, also the head of Cyber Command, the NSA has determined that Snowden visited a site that had this particular document from April, which was a specific FISA court order to Verizon for a certain amount of data, as part of the training materials that NSA employees are required to go through in order to know the authorities that they have as collectors inside the NSA. And what he said is, in a lot of cases, Snowden was able to spoof or create a kind of fake certificate or fake digital key that allowed him access to highly classified areas of the NSA system. So this is from Director Alexander. When I asked about this of other sources of mine in the U.S. government that talked to me for the original story, they said that the FBI was indeed investigating the FISA court breach as a possibility. And when I asked the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Mike Rogers, who's closely monitoring this investigation, he said that it was too early to rule anything in or rule anything out as to how Mr. Snowden obtained the FISA court warrant. But right now, most information we have on the record is from the NSA director, who says that Edward Snowden was able to find this court document inside an NSA database that was used as a sort of training material for NSA employees.
Did he say he was able to, or he could have? I want to be very careful about this.
No, he said that he actually visited this site.
Right.
What he did not say is directly whether they determined that Snowden was the source of the leak, although it was strongly implied in comments that he made to me and two other reporters after the hearing today in the House Intelligence Committee.
And the reason this is such a concern is because if Snowden didn't have access to that document, that means that we could be dealing with more than one problem. Is that correct?
Well, there's already been recent disclosures, really to the tech press, and a great reporter at the Washington Post, Ellen Nakashima, who wrote in May about a database that was maintained by Google that was compromised in the famous Aurora hack of 2008-2009. And that was said to have been partly to find in intelligence surveillance targets that Google had turned over to the NSA and the FBI through this sort of process of gaining access to these sort of digital court warrants as a way of determining specifically who would be under surveillance. And this is a new theory that's kind of come out there. That's very different, though, in terms of actually obtaining an actual court warrant. And in terms of getting, an order from the actual FISA court, these are among the most highly classified documents. So the question is, Alexander said this information was available in the NSA system. My understanding is the FBI is still investigating the possibility of a breach inside the FISA court, but it's a fast-moving story, and we're learning a lot, every 12 hours or so.
Is there any indication that the FISA court documents have been grabbed or acquired by anyone else ever before? Is this on you? Is this the first time we have evidence of this?
The first time anything like this has ever leaked.
So there's no evidence that the Chinese or the Russians or the Phobosians of Mars have ever broken into that document?
Well, the FISA court it would be for an intelligence service at least, a roadmap to everybody that is surveilled inside the United States, which means that any agent that was recruited by a foreign intelligence service, or for that matter, we can imagine, we wouldn't call it a recruit, but homegrown Al-Qaeda, so to speak, that Americans who've joined Al-Qaeda who would be under surveillance would be known to whoever had compromised that system. At this point, I want to stress that I didn't write this in my story. No one has determined that there has been such a compromise. It is one possibility that's being looked at.
Would Snowden have been in a position to know that this was very sacred territory, that he was wandering into territory that was very vital to the national security, or could it have been something that he didn't know, that he was just there?
At this point, I don't know the answer to that question. Mm-hmm. And we really are learning from Edward Snowden through interviews he's given to the Washington Post, the South China Morning Post, and of course the Guardian. And then more recently, a live chat that Edward Snowden gave in which he discussed, a number of things. He was asked a number of these questions and defended himself when he sort of said that many NSA employees could access all kinds of information that were stored by the NSA. The hearing today pushed back on a lot of that, although a lot of the answers that were given by the NSA director, the deputy director of the FBI, the general counsel of the NSA, a lot of these answers were really tailored, at times at least, to discuss two programs, Section 702 of the Federal Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act amendments that is used to justify collection of a lot of the kind of email data, and then Section 215 of the Patriot Act, which is the business records program to collect what they call telephony metadata, or the numbers of which, basically your phone bill information without any names attached to it. So there were a lot of very declarative statements made about those two programs. What was not really discussed in the same way, although there were some moments, were the overall capabilities or total collection of the NSA. And we're sort of in a strange period right now. It looks like the president, as well as the director of national intelligence, are in the process of declassifying a lot of information about these programs and publicly acknowledging their existence really for the first time ever after these unauthorized disclosures in the Guardian and the Washington Post. At the same time, they are clearly deciding what can possibly remain a secret. And part of that is determining exactly what it is that Snowden has gotten.
Eli, the deputy director of the FBI, Sean Joyce, what does he believe will happen to Snowden?
Well, when he was asked this question at the hearing, he gave a one-word answer, what Snowden should be expecting from the U.S. government, and his answer was justice. And that is a really interesting question at this point, because it's very unclear what kind of process there will be for Mr. Snowden, but he is asked for his fate to be determined by a court in Hong Kong.
Right.
And, we will see in the coming days and weeks, perhaps, whether that court will, in some ways, grant him asylum, I guess.
Justice. It's an interesting word from the deputy director of the FBI. Eli Lake, national security for the Daily Beast. The FISA court document that you first saw, that's at issue. How did Snowden get it if he did? And if he did not, who did? Open question right now. I'm John Batchelor.